maybe 6 or 7 years ago, back in the early 2000, when the international organizations or movements started grading countries in terms of press freedom. There was one website, I can't remember offhand, but it was like a freedom of information website that published the top 10 enemies of the press. And surprisingly, Malaysia was number 7 in the top 10 amongst countries like North Korea, Iran, Iraq, Uganda as an example. So these were all the countries, or the top 10 countries that were listed as the top 10 enemies of the press, and Malaysia was number 7, or within the top 10. So it's not something that's recent. It's something that's been ongoing for a long time, and we, the alternative media, or the new media, has been focusing on this issue for quite a while. But I suppose it's not until very recently, when there were some resignations from the mainstream media, electronic media as an example, like TV stations, and mainstream media which were perceived, or which are perceived as pro-government or friendly to the government, where they too now reveal, because of resignations and protests and all that, they too reveal that there's a lot of interference in the media. But this interference has been going on for a long time. No one appeared concerned or spoke out against it all these years. You look at Operasi Lalang as an example. The Star, which is owned by a political party, and a political party within the ruling coalition, it too had its license suspended. I think it was 7 months the license was suspended for publishing the list and names and photographs of all the ISA detainees, 108 I think it was, detainees under Operasi Lalang. Now, I think since Operasi Lalang and since what happened to the Star, a lot of newspapers, mainstream media, are now practicing what we call self-censorship. Now, even if they do not practice self-censorship, they are constantly reminded that they have to censor a lot of things. Now, not many people realize newspaper editors get calls from the ministry almost every day. And almost like every week they are summoned to the ministry, and the ministry will tell them what they did wrong and what the ministry is not happy about and stuff like that. Now, licenses, publishing licenses, need to be renewed every year. And all the ministry has to do, they don't even have to reject your license. All the ministry has to do is either not renew your license or delay 2-3 months in renewing your license, and you're in trouble. So whenever you receive a phone call from Putrajaya or from the ministry, and they tell this newspaper or this newspaper editor what they should not publish, or whether tell them what they published this morning the government's not too happy about, they will certainly be very, very careful about what can and cannot go into a newspaper report. And even way back, years back, newspaper editors have been complaining that they receive phone calls every day. And sometimes you have a situation, say like during a function, the Prime Minister gives a speech, and during the press conference after that, the Prime Minister makes a statement, and they suddenly realize that it was a wrong statement to make. For instance, even during the time Tun Ghaffar Babar was Deputy Prime Minister, he used to make a lot of mistakes, blunders in making certain statements. And then his aides will tell him, that time he wasn't Tun yet, will tell him, Cik Ghaffar, that was a mistake. You should not have said that, that's very damaging. Oops. So his press secretaries then start phoning all the mainstream newspapers and says, this morning's function, Gafar said this. Can you please make sure you black out that statement? Don't publish that statement. It was a slip of the tongue. He should not have said that. And okay, the newspapers comply, and the newspapers will not publish that error in statement that Tun Gafar made. And it's sort of a cooperation, you know. Ministry calls you and asks you to cooperate, or the Deputy Prime Minister's press secretary calls you and asks you to cooperate by blacking out certain news, which was a mistake they made this morning, and the newspapers will cooperate and not do so. So this sort of press censorship has been ongoing since way back in the 70s, way back in the 80s, and is now, only now, that newspaper editors or senior people in the mainstream media are protesting and are coming out. I think it's a case of too little, too late, if you ask me. I think the culture that newspapers, mainstream media, TV stations, they are controlled, not only controlled by licensing, which is supposed to be renewed every year, and will probably not be renewed if you do not cooperate, but the fact that newspaper editors accept the culture of they will receive phone calls, not only from the Prime Minister's office or Deputy Prime Minister's office, but even like press secretaries and officials in the ministry, calling them to tell them what they can and cannot publish, or whether what they published is wrong and in future don't do it. We don't allow such things. So after many years of this kind of culture, I think by now most mainstream newspapers, most editors know the parameters or the boundaries that have been set of what they are allowed to do and what they are not allowed to do. I suppose the only way to restore press freedom, to remove this, you know, self-censorship culture, or even not self-censorship but censorship from the government, you know, when they call you and stuff like that, would be to remove the license. Why do we need in the first place a printing license or publication license? The fact that you need a license and the license is renewed every year means there's always this element of fear. Fear that you lose a license if you do not cooperate. Fear that you will not get your license extended or renewed if you do not practice self-censorship. Well, okay, fine. So you remove the license. Anyone is free to set up a newspaper. Make it, you know, make it an economic decision. May the best man win.
2 more minutes.
The best newspapers will sell. The lousy newspapers will not sell. It's a business decision. You compete. And you don't have to close down newspapers. Newspapers with no credibility will not survive. And in the event that newspapers print lies, you are free to file a civil suit and take the newspaper to court and claim damages. And at the end of the day, the newspapers themselves will know what they should print because they want to sell more newspapers, and what they should not print because they want to avoid being dragged to court and being sued for hundreds of millions of ringgit. So that will be how the controls or censorship should be implemented. Not the fear of not getting a license or being called up by the government every day and told off and scolded for doing the wrong thing. I think that's the only way, I feel, you know, where we can have a more matured media and a less control, less censorship of the media.